The HOA was tearing down my lake house, my home, over unpaid fees for an association I had never agreed to, never joined, never signed a single document for. I had been gone 6 weeks, 6 quiet, peaceful weeks, visiting my daughter and grandkids. And when I came back, there was a demolition crew swinging a wrecking ball straight through the walls I had raised board by board with my own 2 hands. They leveled everything, my workshop, my porch, my late wife's beloved piano, the one she played every night while the sun set over the water, crushed beneath steel tracks and dust. The foreman didn't even look ashamed. He shoved a crumpled stack of papers at me and muttered, "You're part of the HOA now." And behind him, leaning on her shiny SUV with sunglasses pushed up on her sprayed hair, was the HOA president, smiling, arms crossed, watching my life be reduced to rubble like it was entertainment. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I owned the one thing that controlled every single property in that neighborhood. And I had been keeping that card very, very quiet. How far would you go to reclaim what's yours? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments, because the next part of this story isn't about loss. It's about consequences. The old RV rattled as I turned off the highway. It felt good to be heading home. The gravel along my driveway made that familiar grinding crunch beneath the tires, the same sound I'd heard nearly every morning for 2 decades. It was still early. The lake was calm. The sky was soft and gold. But something was wrong. The air smelled burnt. Not like wood stove smoke or a campfire. No. This was the sour chemical grit of diesel exhaust and crushed drywall. I'd smelled that smell for most of my working life, 30 years as the county fire chief. It's the smell of endings. I rounded. The last stand of pine trees, and everything inside me went still. My home was gone. Men in reflective vests were moving around the property like ants. A massive excavator sat idle, its bucket dripping debris. The land where my deck, my windows, my living room had once stood was nothing but shattered lumber and torn insulation. One section of siding still stood upright, jagged and alone, like a gravestone. And in the wreckage, half buried, half exposed like a broken bone, was my wife's piano. The walnut frame was splintered. The keys were scattered like snow. Something in me, something old, something primal, tightened. I stepped out of the RV. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked toward the ruins. A man with a clipboard intercepted me. "Sir, you're trespassing. This structure is condemned." "This was my home," I said quietly. "Explain." He didn't blink. He didn't apologize. He just tapped the clipboard like that made him God. "You didn't pay your HOA dues." I stared at him. "I am not part of your HOA." "Oh, you are now," he said, as if it were already carved into stone. 12 years ago, a developer tried to buy my land to build that entire neighborhood. I refused. I paid surveyors myself. I had lawyers draw up boundary protections so tight you could have played guitar strings on the property line. My 12 acres were separate, completely. Their HOA rules didn't apply. Couldn't apply. Yet here I stood, watching proof that someone had decided they didn't care how the law worked. I checked my mailbox. I found a stack of envelopes, fake meeting notes, backdated dues. A notice claiming they had voted to annex my land for visual uniformity of the lakeshore. They voted, among themselves, to take my home, and while they voted, I was reading bedtime stories to my grandchildren. I called the county. The clerk pulled up my parcel records and her voice changed. "Not professional anymore, concerned. Mr. Whitaker, the HOA has no jurisdiction over your property. They should not have been able to request this demolition." "Then show me the permit." "Who signed it?" The PDF arrived, and there it was, my signature. Copied and pasted from an old digital form I had signed years ago for roof repairs. A perfect duplicate, a forgery, a felony. This wasn't an accident. This was theft. I sat inside my RV staring out at the ruins. Not crying, not shaking, just planning. I reviewed security footage. 6 months, clip by clip. Not a single HOA notice posted on my door. Not one person stepping foot on my porch. Strike one. I dug into their HOA records. Most of it was sloppy, careless. But I found their message board. And there she was, Linda Roswell, HOA president, bragging about dealing with the stubborn lake property, talking about me like I was some obstacle to be removed. She had no idea what she had actually done. Because while they had been building houses, sidewalks, clubhouses, and fountains, I had bought something else entirely. The land beneath their private road, the access strip their entire neighborhood depended on. They had demolished my home. Now I owned their ability to reach theirs, and I was done being polite. She went on and on in that forum about how my home didn't fit the community aesthetic. She said my handcrafted lake house was an eyesore compared to their identical beige boxes. She even complained bitterly that I had refused to sell the land years ago when the developer wanted it. Then I found the message that exposed everything. It was the third reply in the chain, written by Linda herself. She wrote, "If he won't sell, we'll force compliance through a lien. We'll make the situation appear justified. Trust me, we'll make it look right on paper." Those weren't the words of a neighbor. Those were the words of someone who knew she was breaking the law and was confident that no one would challenge her. Now I had motive, intent, and arrogance all documented in her own writing. I went back to the demolition permit open on my laptop and placed it alongside the roofing permit from 8 years ago. The signature they used, my signature, was the exact same one I had signed digitally years before. But on my original roofing permit, the signature had faint pressure gradients and a slight blue tint from the digital pad. The signature on the demolition permit was pure flat black. A copy, a lift and paste, a forgery. But that wasn't the proof I really needed. Most people don't realize something important. PDFs remember things. Every PDF has behind-the-scenes data, timestamps, devices, user accounts, the digital equivalent of fingerprints. So I opened the file's metadata. There it was. The county created the original file during business hours. But the final edited version? It had been opened, altered, and resaved on a home computer registered to a user named Linda R., and the timestamp made something inside me go completely still. 7 a.m., a Tuesday. She forged the order in the dead of night. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated fraud. The next morning, I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Miller had known me for decades. Fire scenes, rescues, storms. We'd worked side by side. He shook my hand and his expression tightened when he saw the exhaustion in my face. "Jack, I heard about your property." "I'm truly sorry." We sat in his office. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I laid everything out like evidence in an arson case. The missing notices that never existed. The footage from my security cameras proving no one ever came. The HOA forum posts spelling out their intent. The forged signatures. The metadata connecting everything back to Linda. He leaned back slowly, rubbing his jaw. Then he let out a heavy breath. "Jack, officially, you'll need to file a complaint so we can open an investigation. You know the system." I nodded. But then he lowered his voice. "You didn't hear this from me. That HOA and that woman have been pulling stunts like this for years. We've had several homeowners complain of mysterious fines, boundary violations, and compliance liens. But every single one of them caved before it got this far." He opened a drawer and slid a sheet of paper to me, a list of names and phone numbers. "These folks tried to fight. They might talk to you." I folded the list and put it into my jacket. The anger was gone now, replaced by something calmer, harder, resolve. They had bullied others into silence, but not me, not this time. To destroy a lie, you need a truth so undeniable it crushes them under its weight. I had digital proof, but digital proof can be argued. I needed real-world evidence, physical, unshakable. So I made a call. His name was Doug Stitch Mallister. Retired structural engineer, Vietnam vet. Steady as bedrock. He showed up an hour later in his old truck, coffee in one hand, hard hat in the other. He surveyed the wreckage silently. His jaw tightened. "This wasn't collapse," he finally said. This was intentional. A hit job. He began collecting evidence. Drone imaging of the foundation, high-resolution scans of load-bearing beam fractures, measurements of slab stability. The foundation, the very base of the home, was still perfectly sound. No structural failure, no code violation, no reason, none, for demolition. Next, we pulled the supposed emergency structural failure report the HOA filed to justify the teardown. At the bottom was the signature of a licensed state inspector, a man I knew personally, except the signature was spelled wrong. They forged his name, too sloppy, arrogant, certain no one would ever check. Later that evening, while walking the ruins, I found the lid of my wife's piano, cracked clean through, the polished wood scarred and broken. Inside the lid was a tiny storage compartment she used for sheet music. I opened it. There was a small thumb drive inside, untouched. Back in my RV, I plugged it in. It was filled with videos she recorded before she passed. Messages for our grandchildren, stories, laughter, her voice. Then she looked straight at the camera, like she was looking at me. "Things break," she said softly. "But they can't take what matters. Not from you. What we built together isn't wood or stone. It's who you are. They can't destroy that." I shut the laptop. She was right. They had destroyed the house, but they hadn't destroyed me. And now, they were going to learn exactly who they picked a fight with. I wasn't just fighting over land anymore. I was fighting for someone I loved. For 2 straight days, I barely slept. I lived out of my RV parked just beyond the tree line near the entrance to my property. Coffee and gas station sandwiches kept me alive while I worked the phone, non-stop. I called every homeowner Sheriff Miller had told me about. There was the man who'd been fined $2,000 because his fence supposedly crossed a boundary line that didn't exist. There was the woman who had been threatened with a lien because her window trim was the wrong shade of beige. Each story was the same: intimidation, paperwork, fear. They all had experiences. None of them had evidence, but I did. Stitch had finished his report, 10 pages long, full of high-resolution drone images and citations showing that every part of my build exceeded state and county standards. I printed everything. I made organized folders, 20 of them. Inside each one, the county map showing my true property boundaries, the fraudulent demolition permit, with my stolen signature, the fake inspection sheet, with the inspector's name spelled wrong, Stitch's full engineering breakdown. Then I prepared one last tool, a slim digital recorder. Checked the battery twice. I was done investigating. It was time to move. The Heron Creek HOA board met in a beige, airless community room that smelled like burnt coffee and furniture polish. 15 or so residents sat in folding chairs, bored and tired. At the front table sat the board. And in the middle of them, Linda Roselle, Navy suit. Perfect hair. That frozen smile that said she believed she owned everyone in the room. She barked through the agenda like a dictator. When a resident politely requested permission to plant a new kind of flowering shrub, she cut him down cold. The approved plant list exists for a reason. Cohesion matters. Her tone was sugar over broken glass. I waited, silent, unmoving. Eventually, she noticed me. Her smile twitched. She knew my face, but she believed I was a problem already handled. Something she had crushed. She was about to learn otherwise. When the meeting shifted to new business, I stood up. The room quieted. Linda's smile tightened. "Mr. Whitaker," she said sharply, "this meeting is for HOA members. Your membership has been resolved," I replied calmly. "I'm not here as a member." "Linda, I'm here as the owner of the home and land you illegally destroyed." I placed the stack of packets on the front table. Then I began handing them out. Board members first. Then residents. The room rustled with pages flipping. Linda glanced at the first page. The official county map showing my property was never under HOA jurisdiction. For the first time, Her mask cracked. I continued. On page 2, you'll find the demolition permit you forged using my signature from a roofing permit issued years ago. On page 3, the inspection report with the inspector's name spelled incorrectly. Gasps. Whispers. People leaned away from Linda. Then I pulled out the recorder. But this is the most important piece. Your words, in your own voice. I pressed play. Linda's voice filled the room. He thinks he's exempt from the HOA. We rewrote the boundary lines. Reaction was instant. A single sharp intake of breath. From the entire room. One board member, an older man, silently stood up and walked out. Then the HOA lawyer, a man in a budget suit, stood and tried to regain control. This is inadmissible. None of this holds up in court. Mr. Whitaker, back down. I smiled. A small, tired, dangerous smile. I'm not going to court, I said. I'm going to title. The lawyer froze. He understood. Linda did not, so I explained. 20 years ago, when the original developer went bankrupt, the neighborhood's lots were sold off, but I didn't buy a house lot. I bought everything underneath and around them. The land the roads were built on, the mineral rights beneath the houses, the easements for water, sewer and electricity. Linda tried to argue property ownership. I corrected her. The HOA doesn't own the roads. It only had permission to use them. And when you destroyed my home, you violated that agreement. I paused. As of 8 this morning, I terminated every access easement. Heron Creek Lane, the road everyone used, was now legally mine. And access? Gone. Residents panicked. How will we get home? What about school buses? Mail? I stayed calm. You have 48 hours. Then a gate goes up. The room erupted, but the fury wasn't aimed at me anymore. It turned toward her. A couple approached me quietly. The Millers. They told me Linda had denied their permit to build a wheelchair ramp for their mother. I looked at the woman's tired eyes. I thought of my wife. I nodded, and loudly enough for the room to hear, Your property is under county code, not Linda's preferences. Pull a county permit. Build your ramp. If the HOA interferes, they'll be trespassing. Hope replaced defeat in their faces, and the mood of the room shifted. I wasn't a tyrant. I was the wrecking crew sent for hers. What came next happened fast. The HOA collapsed under its own weight. They tried to remove Linda, but it was too late. They had no authority, no funds, no footing, and Linda, cornered, made a mistake. She called the sheriff, claiming I was blocking a public road. The deputies came. I showed them the deed, the maps, the forged documents. The senior deputy skimmed the pages and quietly muttered counts of the crimes. Forgery, wire fraud, conspiracy. He radioed it in. This is federal. We're contacting the FBI. That was the end of Linda. The FBI dug through the HOA finances, the website logs, the forged signatures. The notary flipped and confessed. 3 weeks later, in front of the entire neighborhood, the FBI walked into a meeting and cuffed Linda. The final click of the cuffs ended her little empire forever. The insurance company settled without a fight. 948-200 I rebuilt. Better, stronger, with a storm shelter and an ADA ramp, because dignity matters. The neighborhood, now free, approached me about the road. We formed a simple agreement. No fines, no approved colors lists, no power games, just neighbors keeping a road maintained. I helped Mr. Miller build his ramp. It took 1 weekend. They thought power came from paperwork, permits, rules. But real power comes from truth. From knowing what's yours and refusing to be bullied off it. I didn't just get my land back. I got my peace back. And I made damn sure no one would ever take it from anyone else again. And that's where this story comes to a close. Power doesn't come from titles, boards, or rules scribbled on paper. It comes from knowing what's right and standing your ground when someone tries to take it from you. If you enjoyed this story, if it hit you in the gut or made you think twice about what control really means, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who loves a good fight against the system. This is HOA Story Files, where we expose the petty tyrants, the hidden battles, and the everyday people who refuse to be pushed around. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next story.